Daniel sat alone under the black sky, staring at the stars. The world was quiet, too quiet for his liking. He had always loved space, its mystery, its beauty, but tonight it felt heavy, like the sky was watching him. Then the sound came. A deep hum, low at first, then rising until the ground itself seemed to tremble. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked up. A ship, silver and alive with strange lights, descended through the clouds. The air shimmered with heat as it landed in the field near his home. Daniel had seen ships before. Humans had lived among aliens for years now, but this one was different. It carried the mark of the Council of Worlds, the ruling body of the galaxy. They never visited humans without reason. The ship's doors opened with a hiss and two tall alien figures stepped out. Their skin glowed faint blue, their eyes sharp like blades. Daniel felt their gaze pierce through him. He tried to speak, but his throat went dry. One of the aliens raised a hand. "Daniel Carter," the voice rang out, not through sound, but directly in his mind. "Cold, heavy, commanding. The Council has chosen you." "Chosen me?" Daniel whispered, confused. "For what?" The alien stepped aside, and from the shadows of the ship, a figure walked forward. A woman, human-like but not quite. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her eyes dark with sorrow. She moved slowly, like her body carried invisible chains. The alien spoke again. "She is your gift. Care for her. Protect her. She is yours." Daniel stared in disbelief. "Gift? She's a person." The woman lowered her head, saying nothing. Her silence cut deeper than any words. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest. Why me? Why would the Council send her to me? The aliens did not answer. They turned and stepped back into the ship. With a burst of light and thunder, the ship lifted off, leaving Daniel and the woman alone in the cold night. The silence that followed was louder than the ship's roar. Daniel looked at her. This strange, silent woman who now stood in his field like a statue. He could see sadness in her eyes and something else, fear. He spoke gently. "What's your name?" She did not answer. Instead, she raised her hand and traced a glowing symbol in the air. The light shimmered for a moment, then vanished. Daniel could not read it, but he understood one thing. She was not ordinary. He sighed, rubbing his face. "I don't understand this. I didn't ask for this. Why me?" The woman tilted her head as if studying him. Then softly, almost too soft to hear, she whispered one word. "Lyra." Daniel froze. Her voice was faint, cracked, like it had not been used in years. But it was enough. "Lyra," he repeated, testing the name on his tongue. She nodded once. That night, Daniel brought her into his small home. She moved carefully, as if afraid to touch anything. She did not eat, did not drink, only sat by the window and stared at the stars. Daniel could not sleep. Questions burned in his mind. Why had the Council sent her? Why call her a gift? And why choose him, a simple man with no power, no rank? As the hours passed, Daniel noticed something strange. Lyra hummed softly, almost like a song. The tune was haunting, filled with sorrow and longing. It was not random, it was a lullaby. Daniel shivered. Why would she sing a lullaby when she had no child? The next morning he tried to ask her more, but she remained mostly silent, speaking only in symbols drawn in the air. He could not read them, yet they glowed with alien power. Days passed, and Daniel felt the weight of her presence grow heavier. People in town noticed her too. Whispers began to spread. Some called her a curse. Others said she was dangerous. And through it all, Daniel kept asking himself the same question. Why me? One evening, as the sun bled red across the sky, Daniel finally snapped. "Tell me, Lyra, why are you here? Why did they send you to me?" For the first time, she met his eyes without fear. She touched her chest, then touched his. Her lips moved, forming words without sound. Daniel could only guess their meaning, but he felt it. A message without language, a secret too heavy for words. In that moment, Daniel realized something chilling. She was not a gift. She was a burden, a test. And whatever truth she carried, it was dangerous enough that the Council had left her with him, far from their worlds, far from their laws. Daniel's hands trembled. He had not asked for this, yet now his life was no longer his own. The stars outside seemed to pulse brighter, as if the galaxy itself was watching. And deep inside, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The mornings in Daniel's home used to be quiet, but now, with Lyra sitting by the window, silence felt different. It wasn't peace. It was heavy, filled with unspoken words. She would watch the horizon for hours, as if waiting for something or someone that would never come. Daniel tried to understand her. He offered her food, but she barely ate. He asked questions, but she gave no answer. When he grew frustrated, she would only lower her eyes as if ashamed. It was not that she didn't understand him. She did. He could see it in her eyes, sharp and intelligent. She simply couldn't or wouldn't speak. One evening, Daniel left a notebook and pen on the table. "If you can't talk, maybe you can write," he said softly. She looked at the notebook for a long time. Her pale fingers touched the cover, trembling slightly, but then she pushed it away. Instead, she raised her hand and drew glowing shapes in the air. Strange symbols, alive with faint light, hung there for seconds before fading. Daniel frowned. I don't understand." Her lips moved, forming silent words. No sound came, but her eyes were filled with meaning. Daniel felt helpless. That night he dreamed of stars burning out one by one until the sky was empty. In the dream he heard her voice, clear and strong, singing the same haunting lullaby she hummed at night. When he woke, the sound still echoed in his ears, though she sat silently across the room. Days turned into weeks. Daniel learned small things about Lyra. She liked warmth. She sat close to the fire. She disliked loud noises. Whenever machines roared in town, she would flinch. And she had a strange habit. Every night before sleep, she whispered into the darkness. He never caught the words, but they sounded like prayers or confessions. One afternoon, a storm rolled in. Rain hammered the roof and thunder split the sky. Daniel found Lyra standing outside, drenched, arms raised toward the lightning. Panic surged through him. "What are you doing?" he shouted, running to her. She turned, eyes glowing faintly in the stormlight. For a second she looked almost otherworldly, like she belonged to the storm itself. Then the glow faded and she collapsed into his arms. Daniel carried her inside. Her body was cold, trembling. As he laid her on the bed, he noticed scars along her arms, thin silver lines, not human scars. "What happened to you?" He whispered, but she did not answer. When she woke, she stared at him with fear in her eyes. Fear, not of the storm, but of him seeing too much. That night, she finally gave him a sign. She sat at the table, drew a circle of light in the air, then placed her hand on her chest. She drew another circle, smaller, then pointed to him. Daniel tried to piece it together. 2 circles, one large, one small. Was she saying she belonged to something greater, or was she comparing their lives? Frustrated, he shook his head. "I don't understand, Lyra. I want to, but I can't." Her face fell. For the first time, Daniel saw tears roll down her cheeks, silent tears filled with years of loneliness. His chest ached. She wasn't just mute, she was trapped inside her own silence. Without thinking, Daniel took her hand. "It's okay," he said quietly. "You don't have to explain everything. We'll figure it out together." Her eyes widened, and for a heartbeat the sadness softened. She gave the smallest nod. The next day, something unusual happened. Daniel went to town to buy supplies. Whispers followed him everywhere. Is it true the council gave him a woman? She doesn't speak, doesn't eat, maybe she's dangerous. Maybe she's not even human at all. By the time Daniel returned home, anger boiled inside him. But when he saw Lyra waiting by the door, her dark eyes watching for him, the anger melted into worry. She was already treated like a ghost, even without stepping outside. That night he asked her again gently, "Lyra, why are you here? Why me?" She hesitated, then did something unexpected. She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. Her fingers were cold, but her touch was steady. She whispered, just one word so faint he almost thought he imagined it. "Life." Daniel froze. Her voice was cracked, weak, but it was real. "One word, one clue, life," he repeated. "What does that mean?" "My life, yours, a child's?" But she said no more. She closed her eyes as if the single word had taken all her strength. Daniel lay awake for hours after. Life. The word repeated in his mind, heavy with meaning. He thought about the lullabies, the tears, the scars, the way she touched lightning like it was calling her home. Who was she really? And why did the council call her a gift when she felt more like a secret? Daniel's gut told him the truth. Whatever reason she was here, it was bigger than both of them. The storm outside had passed, but inside his heart, a new storm had begun. The war came suddenly. Daniel had heard rumors of alien fleets fighting on distant worlds, but he never thought it would reach his quiet town. Yet one morning, the sky filled with burning trails of fire, Ships fell like dying stars and the earth shook with explosions. Daniel pulled Lyra into the cellar of his small home. The ground roared above them. She clung to his arm, her dark eyes wide with fear, but not just fear. There was something else, something deeper, as if she knew exactly what this war would bring. When the noise faded and silence returned, Daniel climbed out. Smoke covered the horizon. He ran through the fields, searching for survivors. That was when he found them. At the edge of the woods, half hidden beneath broken metal, lay a group of small figures, children. Their skin was different, green, silver, even translucent, but their cries were the same. Weak, frightened, desperate. Daniel's heart pounded. Oh no! He pulled away the wreckage and lifted them out one by one. Some were unconscious, their tiny chests barely rising. Others whimpered softly, eyes glazed with pain. Lyra, he shouted. She appeared, pale in the smoke, and when she saw the children, her face changed. For the first time since he met her, she looked alive. She knelt beside the smallest child, placing her hand gently on its chest. Her eyes glowed faintly. She shook her head. Weak, she whispered. Too weak. Daniel felt panic rising. What do we do? They'll die if we don't help them. Lyra's lips trembled. She touched the scars on her arm as if remembering something painful. Then she stood, pulling Daniel toward the ruins of the alien ship. Inside, broken machines sparked and hissed. Lyra moved quickly, searching through the wreckage. She pointed to one large device, its glass tube shattered, its core still glowing faintly. Daniel frowned. What is this? Lyra traced a glowing symbol in the air. He couldn't read it, but the meaning reached him somehow. Life support. Artificial womb. Daniel froze. You want to use this? She nodded, her eyes fierce. He shook his head. But I don't know how to build something like this. Lyra stepped closer. She placed her hand on his chest again, then on her own. Together, she whispered. For hours they worked side by side. Lyra guided him with gestures and glowing symbols, showing him how to connect broken wires, how to repair leaking tubes, how to use strange crystals as power. Daniel's hands bled from sharp edges, but he didn't stop. The children's cries grew weaker. Each second was a blade against his heart. Finally, the machine hummed to life. A faint glow filled the glass chambers. Lyra gently lifted the smallest alien child, fragile as a bird, and placed it inside. The glow wrapped around the child like a soft blanket. Daniel held his breath. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, the child's chest rose higher. Its color brightened. The faint sound of breathing filled the air. Daniel exhaled sharply. It's working. Lyra's lips curved into the smallest smile. She touched the glass gently, eyes shining with something he had never seen in her before. Hope. They placed more children inside the repaired chambers. One by one, the weak bodies grew stronger, their breath steadier. Daniel sat back, exhausted. Sweat and dust covered his face, but his heart felt lighter. He looked at Lyra, who stood watching the machine like a mother guarding her children. You knew, he said softly. You knew this could be done. Lyra's eyes lowered. Her hand touched the scars on her arms again. Daniel understood. She had done this before. She had tried to save lives, but had paid a heavy price for it. Now, with him, she was doing it again. That night, as the children slept safely inside the glowing chambers, Daniel heard something new. Lyra's voice, not humming, not whispering, but singing. A lullaby, clear and soft, filling the ruined ship with warmth. The children stirred in their sleep, soothed by the sound. Daniel closed his eyes, listening. He realized then that Lyra was not just a woman the council had abandoned. She was more. She was a mother, though not by blood, not by birth, by choice. By heart, and without meaning to, Daniel had become part of that choice. But even in that moment of peace, fear lingered in his chest. The council's laws were strict. No species was allowed to tamper with life in such ways. What they had done, what Lyra had taught him, was forbidden. If the council learned about this, they would not forgive. As the first light of dawn broke through the smoke, Daniel looked at the children, safe and breathing. Then he looked at Lyra, her pale face glowing softly in the light. He whispered, almost to himself, "We've crossed a line we can't go back from." Lyra met his gaze. She did not speak, but her eyes answered. Yes. They had crossed it. Together. The war ended as suddenly as it had begun. Ships stopped falling, the thunder faded, and the sky grew quiet again. But Daniel's home was no longer the same. Inside the ruins of the alien ship, the repaired chambers still glowed softly. The children, different shapes, colors, and species, breathed peacefully within them. Daniel checked them every morning, every night, making sure each tiny chest still rose with life. Lyra stayed by their side almost always. She did not eat much, she did not sleep much, but she watched. Her eyes followed every small movement of the children as if she were guarding a treasure. Daniel often found her humming that same lullaby, her fingers tracing protective symbols in the air. The children seemed to calm when she did it, even in their sleep. It was then Daniel realized something strange. Lyra, the woman the council had called a gift, was becoming something else entirely. Not his gift, not his burden. She was becoming a mother. At first, Daniel kept their secret, but secrets never stay hidden for long. One night, there was a knock at his door. Daniel opened it to find a farmer from town. Behind him stood two small alien children, weak, thin, their eyes sunken with hunger. "Please," the farmer whispered. "I heard what you did. They say you saved the lost ones. Can you help these two?" Daniel froze. He looked at Lyra. She stepped forward without hesitation, gently pulling the children inside. Her hands glowed faintly as she touched them, whispering her silent comfort. The farmer bowed his head. "Bless you, both of you." Then he left quickly, afraid to be seen. From that night, more began to come. Not just humans, but aliens too. Travelers, refugees, people with no hope. They brought orphans, children left behind by war, famine, or cruelty. And each time, Daniel and Lyra accepted them. The house grew crowded. The chambers they had rebuilt filled one by one until there was no space left. Daniel used his tools and scrap metal to build more, following Lyra's guidance. Soon his small home became a hidden sanctuary. Laughter began to return. The children, once weak and silent, now played in the fields. Daniel taught them simple games. Some spoke in human words, others in alien tongues, but joy needed no translation. He never thought he would hear it again. Laughter echoing through his lonely land. It filled his heart with something he had not felt in years: purpose. But with every new child, the risk grew. One evening, as Daniel carried water from the well, a neighbor stopped him. "You've got too many mouths in that house of yours." "Folks are talking." Daniel forced a smile. "Just helping where I can." The neighbor narrowed his eyes. "Be careful. The council doesn't like people interfering." Daniel's stomach twisted. He knew the man was right. The council's laws were clear. No one was allowed to alter the natural balance of life. And yet that was exactly what he and Lyra were doing. That night he sat by the fire staring at the flames. Lyra came to sit beside him. For a long while they said nothing. Finally Daniel spoke. "We're risking everything. If they find out..." Lyra touched his hand. Her eyes shone in the firelight, steady and calm. She whispered one word, soft but firm. "Family." Daniel felt his chest tighten. Family. It was not a word of law, not a word of duty. It was a word of choice. And in that choice he understood. They could not stop now. Days turned into months. The sanctuary became known in whispers as the House of the Forgotten. More children came, and though Daniel tried to hide them, the truth began to slip beyond his small town. One night, Daniel found Lyra sitting outside, gazing at the stars. He sat beside her. "Why do you do this?" he asked quietly. "You've suffered enough. Why keep taking in more pain?" She looked at him. And though she barely spoke, her eyes told him everything. She had lost something once, something precious. But now, through these children, she was finding it again. Daniel realized the truth in his own heart. He had once been a man with nothing, no family, no future. But now, surrounded by orphans of every world, he was no longer empty. He was no longer just a man, he was a father, but shadows always follow light. One evening, as the children slept, a loud knock shook the door. Daniel opened it to find two armored figures. Their eyes glowed faint blue, the same as the council soldiers he had seen before. Daniel Carter, one said coldly. "The council has questions." Daniel's blood ran cold. Behind him, Lyra appeared, her pale face calm but her hands trembling. The soldier's eyes flicked to her, then to the sound of children's laughter inside the house. The taller soldier's mouth curved into something that was not quite a smile. "It seems you've been busy. Daniel's fists clenched. He stepped into the doorway, blocking their view. "They're just children," the soldier's voice hardened. "They are violations. Life created against law. The council will not forgive this." As the soldiers turned to leave, Daniel's heart pounded with dread. He knew what would come next. The House of the Forgotten had been discovered. And soon, the council would come to take it away. The children were playing in the fields when the first council ships appeared. Silver and sharp, they broke through the clouds like blades. The sound of their engines shook the ground. The children froze, their laughter cut short. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had known this day would come. The soldiers at his door had been only a warning. Now the council had returned in force. Lyra stepped out of the house, her pale face calm but her hands trembling at her sides. The glow in her eyes flickered faintly. She knew too. The law had found them. The ships landed in a circle around the field. Dozens of armored soldiers poured out, their weapons gleaming with cold light. Their leader, taller than the rest, stepped forward. His voice carried not in sound but in thought, heavy in Daniel's mind. "Daniel Carter, you are accused of breaking galactic law. You have sheltered forbidden life. You have interfered with the balance of bloodlines. By decree of the council, the children must be taken." Behind Daniel, the children began to cry. Some clung to his legs, others to Lyra's dress. Fear spread through them like fire. Daniel's fists clenched. He stepped in front of the children, his voice steady. "They're not violations. They're children. Living, breathing, innocent." The soldier's eyes narrowed. "They are not yours. They were never meant to live." Daniel's anger burned hot. "Then maybe your law is wrong." The soldiers raised their weapons. Lyra gasped, moving quickly to shield the smallest children. Her eyes glowed brighter, but Daniel saw the fear in them. She knew what the council could do. The leader's voice struck again. "Step aside, human. This is your final warning." Daniel stood taller, his body shaking but his will unbroken. "No, if you want them, you'll have to go through me." The soldiers moved forward. The children screamed. But before a shot was fired, Lyra raised her hand. Symbols of light exploded in the air, glowing fiercely. The soldiers staggered back as the symbols formed a barrier around the children. Daniel stared. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Her lips moved, her voice faint but clear. "Protect." The barrier shimmered like glass, but cracks already formed under the soldiers' weapons. Daniel realized she was using her strength, her very life, to hold it up. The leader sneered. "So it's true. You were the exile. The council cast you out for this crime, and now you infect another with your rebellion." Daniel's eyes snapped to Lyra. "Exile?" Lyra's face was pale, her body trembling, but her eyes met his. In them, Daniel saw the truth. She had once been part of the council. She had tried to save lives before, just as she was saving them now, and for that she had been cast away. Daniel's heart ached. She had never been a gift. She had been a punishment. The council had left her with him because they thought she was broken, powerless. But they had been wrong. She was stronger than all of them. The barrier cracked again. The children sobbed, pressing close to Daniel. He held them, his voice rough. "Don't be afraid. We'll protect you, no matter what." The leader raised his weapon. "Enough, the law will not forgive. End this." Daniel braced himself, ready to throw his body over the children. But before the strike came, something unexpected happened. The children began to sing, soft at first, then louder. A mixture of human voices and alien tones, different languages blending into one. It was the lullaby Lyra always sang. Somehow they had learned it. The song filled the air, cutting through the roar of weapons. The soldiers hesitated. Even the leader froze, his eyes narrowing. Daniel looked at Lyra. She was crying, not with fear but with pride. The children were not just surviving. They were fighting back in the only way they could, but the council was not moved. The leader's voice thundered in Daniel's mind. "This is not love. It is chaos. The law exists to keep order. Without it, the galaxy falls." Daniel shouted back, his voice breaking. "Then your order is built on death. What good is law if it kills children just for being alive?" The leader raised his weapon again. Enough, the barrier shattered. Light exploded and Lyra collapsed to her knees. The children screamed. Daniel threw himself in front of them. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stop. The soldiers' weapons glowed, aimed at him. He thought it was the end. Then the sky thundered, not with weapons but with voices. People from the town. Farmers, traders, travelers, humans and aliens both. They had heard the children's cries and come running. They carried no weapons, only their bodies. They formed a wall around Daniel's home, standing between the soldiers and the children. The leader's eyes blazed with fury. "Stand aside. This is council law," a farmer shouted back, his voice shaking but strong. "Then your law is wrong. These children belong here. With him, with her, with all of us," the soldiers faltered. The law was clear, but the will of the people was louder. The leader snarled. "This is not over. The council will not forgive. You will all pay for this defiance." The soldiers retreated to their ships, but their threat lingered in the air like smoke. Daniel knelt beside Lyra. She was pale, exhausted, but alive. She looked at him, her lips forming silent words. Daniel understood. The fight had only just begun. He held her hand, then looked at the children. His children, hers, theirs. His voice was steady, though his heart burned with fear. "We'll protect them," he said. "No matter what, even if the whole galaxy stands against us." The children clung to him. Lyra's faint smile returned, but above them the council ships vanished into the clouds. And Daniel knew they would come back. Next time stronger. Next time without mercy, because the law had spoken, and the law would not forgive. The council did not wait long. Days after the soldiers left, the sky darkened again. This time the ships were larger, their silver hulls shining like blades. They did not land in Daniel's fields, they hovered above, casting shadows that swallowed the land. A voice echoed through the air, carried on every wind. "Daniel Carter, Lyra of the Exile, you are ordered to appear before the Council of Worlds. Refuse, and all you protect will be destroyed." The children huddled together, trembling. Daniel clenched his fists. He wanted to fight, but Lyra placed a hand on his arm. Her eyes, though tired, were calm. She whispered one word. "Go." Daniel understood. If they ran, the council would burn everything. If they fought here, the children would suffer. The only chance was to face them. So Daniel and Lyra boarded the ship, leaving the children with trusted neighbors. As the ship rose into the clouds, Daniel looked back. He saw the children waving, small hands reaching out, and his heart ached. The journey to the council world was long and silent. Lyra sat with her head bowed, her fingers tracing faint symbols in the air. Daniel wanted to speak, to comfort her, but no words felt strong enough. When the ship landed, they were led into the great hall of the council. The hall was massive, filled with light that glowed from no source. At the center stood a circle of towering figures, the council elders. Their eyes shone like stars, their presence heavy as stone. A voice thundered, not from one, but from all of them together. "You stand accused of breaking sacred law." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. "I saved children. That is my crime?" The elder's gaze burned. "You interfered with the balance. Each species must rise and fall as nature decides. You built what was forbidden. You gave life where there should have been none." Daniel's anger boiled. They weren't none. They were alive, breathing, crying. Children, you call it crime, I call it mercy. Murmurs filled the hall. Some council members looked uneasy. Others glared with cold fury. Then the focus shifted to Lyra. The elders' voices hardened. "And you, exile. You were cast out once for this sin. Yet you continue. Why?" Lyra lifted her head slowly. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her lips parted, and for the first time in front of so many, she spoke clearly. Her voice was soft but strong. "Because law's not life. Because silence kills more than war." The hall stirred. Daniel's chest tightened. She had broken her silence at last. One elder leaned forward. "You are sterile. You cannot bear life. And yet you claim to be a mother?" Lyra's gaze did not falter. "A mother is not only blood. A mother is care. A mother is love. If that is crime, then I will carry it." Her words fell like stones into water, sending ripples through the hall. The trial continued. Witnesses were called. Soldiers who had seen the sanctuary, townsfolk who had heard the laughter of the children. Some spoke in Daniel's defense. Others demanded punishment. At last the elders turned to Daniel again. "Why do you, a human man, take this burden? You could have refused. You could have stepped aside. Why defy the council?" Daniel's throat burned, but his voice came strong. "Because I know loneliness. I know what it is to have nothing. And I know what it is to find family where no one expected. You call them mistakes. I call them my children, and I will not abandon them." The hall grew silent. Then from the side a sound broke the silence, Small footsteps. The doors burst open. The children. They had come. Dozens of them of every shape and color running into the great hall. Guards tried to stop them, but the children pushed forward, standing in front of Daniel and Lyra. One small girl stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. He is our father. She is our mother. If you take them, you take us too. Another child, alien and translucent, raised his small arms. We are alive because of them. If that is wrong, then we choose wrong. Voices of children rose together. Humans, aliens, all mixed. Their cries filled the great hall, echoing louder than the elders' voices. For the first time, the council faltered. Some elders lowered their eyes. Others whispered among themselves. The power of law was strong, but the voices of children, united, were stronger. Still, the leader of the elders rose, his eyes burning like fire. Your words touch hearts, but law cannot bend to emotion. If one man, one exile, may break it, then all may. Order will fall. The galaxy will burn. Daniel's chest tightened. He felt the weight of their decision. Life or death, freedom or destruction rested here. He stepped forward, standing tall beside Lyra and the children. His voice rang clear, then let it burn. Because a law that kills children is already broken. Gasps filled the hall. The leader's eyes narrowed. You leave us no choice. The council chamber shook as guards advanced. The children huddled close. Lyra grasped Daniel's hand, her voice whispering one word. Together. Daniel squeezed her hand. His heart pounded, but he stood firm. The trial was not over. But whatever came next, they would face it as family. As the guards closed in, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Because for the first time in history, the council's law faced not warriors, not armies, but a mother, a father, and their children. And the outcome would change everything. The great hall shook with tension. Guards surrounded Daniel, Lyra, and the children. The elders' eyes glowed cold with power, their judgment hanging heavy in the air. Daniel stood tall, shielding the smallest children behind him. Lyra held his hand, her pale face calm but her eyes fierce. The council had declared them criminals, yet in this moment Daniel felt no shame. Only resolve. Take them, the leader thundered. The guards moved forward. Energy weapons hummed, casting blue light across the children's frightened faces. Then something unexpected happened. The children stepped forward too, not to fight, but to stand. Their small bodies formed a circle around Daniel and Lyra. They held hands, their voices rising together in the lullaby Lyra had taught them. The song filled the great hall, echoing against the high walls. It was not a song of war. It was a song of life, of hope, of family. The guards hesitated. The elders frowned, their eyes narrowing. But the song did not stop. Louder and louder it grew, until even those who wished to strike could not lift their weapons. Then the chamber doors burst open. Crowds poured in. Farmers, traders, travelers, aliens, and humans alike. People who had once whispered about Daniel's sanctuary now stood boldly beside him. They had come all this way, risking everything to defend what the council sought to destroy. One voice rose above the crowd. A woman from Daniel's town. If you call them criminals, then we are guilty too. For we believe in them. Another shouted, they gave us family when we had none. More voices followed until the great hall thundered, not with the law of the council, but with the voices of the people. The leader of the elders raised his hand for silence. His voice, deep and cold, cut through the noise. You speak of love, but love is chaos. Love is not law. Without law, the galaxy falls into ruin. Daniel stepped forward, his voice breaking but strong. Without love, the galaxy has no reason to exist. The words hung in the air like fire. The elders shifted uneasily. Some whispered. Some lowered their eyes. The cracks in their unity began to show, but the leader was not ready to yield. His eyes blazed as he pointed to Lyra. She is sterile. She cannot create life. Yet you call her mother? This is an illusion, a falsehood. Lyra lifted her head. Her voice rang clear across the chamber, stronger than ever before. A mother is not only blood. A mother is not only birth. A mother is one who chooses to care, to protect, to love. If that truth is against your law, then your law is broken. Silence followed. Every word struck the hearts of those listening. Even some of the guards lowered their weapons, their eyes softening. The leader's fury grew. You defy the council. You defy the galaxy itself. Do you think one man and one exile can stand against us all? Daniel's voice came steady, unshaken. Not just us. Look around you. We are many. And we will grow, because every child we save, every life we protect makes us stronger. You call us criminals. But history will call us parents. The people cheered. The children sang louder. The council's unity cracked. Some elders rose in anger. Others whispered of change. For the first time in history, the council wavered. Then, in the chaos, a choice was made. One elder, older than the rest, his eyes soft with age, stood. His voice was weary but kind. Perhaps the law must learn. Perhaps love is a greater order than fear. Murmurs spread. Some elders nodded. Others protested. But the tide had shifted. The leader shouted, "This is madness. You will destroy the balance." The old elder's reply was simple. No, they will restore it. The council fractured that day. Some still clung to the old ways, but many chose change. And though the leader swore revenge, the people's voices were louder than his threats. Daniel and Lyra were not executed. They were not cast away. Instead, they were allowed to leave, watched, judged, but not destroyed, because to strike them down now, with the galaxy watching, would break the council's power forever. When Daniel and Lyra returned to their sanctuary, the children ran to them, shouting with joy. The House of the Forgotten was no longer a secret. It was now a symbol, a place of hope whispered across the stars. Daniel stood at the doorway, watching the children laugh, play, and live. His heart swelled. He had once been a man with nothing. Now he was more than a father. He was something greater. Beside him, Lyra whispered softly, her voice trembling but proud. "You are the mother now." Daniel looked at her in surprise. "I'm not," but she shook her head, smiling faintly. "Not by body, by heart, by choice. You are the greatest mother in the galaxy." Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at the children, then at Lyra. His eyes burned with tears he did not hide. "Then we're both mothers," he whispered. Lyra's hand slipped into his. Together they stepped into the light of the children's laughter. And so the story spread, across worlds, across species, across the stars themselves, of a human man and a sterile woman who defied the council, who chose family over law, who turned sorrow into love. Some called them rebels, some called them traitors. But to those who had once been forgotten, they were something else entirely. They were home.